Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this Zoom fireside chat with Rod Boothby, Global Head of Identity for Digital Platforms at Santander. Hi, Rod. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me.
Um, First, could you tell our viewer a bit about yourself in the role of Global Head of Identity at Santander?
My team helps manage all login for a bank that has 145 million customers. So across a whole bunch of different countries, we provide the technology that the bank uses to determine who's logging into an account and if the customer is who they claim to be. So we run all the security checks that need to be done to make sure that our systems protect our customers' accounts and make sure that the wrong person doesn't log in and move cash.
Thank you. And when we speak about identity, we are at IO, we call ourselves a verified identity solution. There are many aspects of identity, from an identity of a human to an identity of a business or corporation. And in the industry and in fintech, there are many companies that use this term in different ways. How would you define an identity?
It's not a simple issue, so it makes sense that you bring up the topic. People have uh, obviously they're who they are uniquely in the world, and how that's defined connects them with official documents that may be issued by a government. This is your passport, or this is your official credential. They may be issued by a university. Here is your degree. They may be issued by a trade association. Here is your pilot's license. Um, all sorts of different bodies that represent who you are, and in different contexts, what it means is it allows you to as you're going through the world, representing your identity means showing people who you are and how they can trust you, whether or not they can put you in a position to um, pick up a shipment, for example, or pay a car loan. Um, what's interesting about identity is that it's it is just information associated with that individual. Um, it's not something that is intrinsic or guaranteed to be associated with everyone. So, for example, we have people who don't necessarily have official. The world has people that don't necessarily have official documentation from their government. Maybe they don't have the financial resources to get that official document. Maybe they're outside the economy. Then we have right up to people who have formal birth certificates, a national ID card. Different countries have different approaches for the same thing. It's never simple to solve it. And what we ultimately need to do as a financial institution is to, when we bring somebody on board, is to try and connect the individual that is in front of us with these official documents and be certain that they really are the owners of that official identity. Also, we need to be able to do it in a way that reconnects them digitally when they're not in front of us, which means that we have to reconnect this individual to all of this information about them every time they go online. That means we can't necessarily be certain that just because you're logging in from a phone and the phone says that you're the person who has owned that phone before, that you're not somebody else who has access to the phone and can't represent that you're the person associated with these official documents. It's a tricky, at its core, it sounds so simple, right? But actually, when you rip it apart, it becomes really complicated.
That's very interesting. Speaking from a viewpoint of Santander as a bank, as a financial institution, why is a financial institution a good area to provide a solution or think about a solution on identity that is used for many other purposes?
Banks have to go through this really complicated process every time they bring on a new customer. We call it onboarding, and we are legally required to do a know your customer process where we connect the person who is opening the account or who is working with us to their official legal identity. We need to do that to make sure that the person is entitled to the assets that they're depositing or that they're withdrawing. We need to do that to protect that person going forward and protect that access. Because we do all of this work, and because we're required to do all of this work to get to know who our customers are, we're kind of in a unique position. We've already done the investment to get to know banks as a whole, not just our bank, but globally, all banks have done this work to get to know billions of people around the world. And we're pretty good at it. We're also an interesting type of institution because we monetize privacy. We don't monetize your data. You don't suddenly realize that you're getting advertising because your bank has sold the record of all of your financial transactions to make an extra buck. Banks don't do that. They are regulated to prevent them from doing that. They're forced to actually protect your data. And it's in our business interests as a financial institution to not share people's secrets, to respect their privacy. That's what we're built around. That's why people trust us. So as a financial institution, we have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the cash that you deposit with us. We also have a financial responsibility to protect any other assets that you leave with us.
It froze for a second. Can you hear me? It's breaking.
Hey, sorry. Might have been at my end. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it froze for a second. I don't know where, but you were talking about having the responsibility to keep your financial assets.
Oh, sure. Okay. So customers, when customers work with banks, they expect the banks to protect their assets. We have a fiduciary responsibility. We have all sorts of regulatory responsibilities to make sure that we protect our customers' assets, their cash, the stocks and bonds that they have with us. We take custodial responsibility to protect them for them. We also do so for their data. That means that we don't take their information ever and resell it to a third party. That's not the business that we're in. We're in the business of providing financial products, not these products. So because of that, we can provide an interesting service for our customers to help protect their privacy. Today, when you go online, if you try to establish a new account somewhere, you have to go through a light version of the know your customer process that you normally go through with a bank. You have to disclose your name, address, phone number to every online system that you're trying to sign up for. They don't need all that information. And the more information you disclose to them, especially if it's your biometrics, for example, the more risk you you put yourself at, to have your identity stolen, and to have somebody else get access to those credentials and leverage them to um, borrow money on your in your name or take your assets. So we want to protect against all of those things, which means consumers want to share their data less. A different way of doing things would be, rather than signing up to a new system, like maybe you're going to sign up for a gig economy job, rather than giving them all of your private information, you ask them simply, ask my bank. My bank will tell you that I'm a citizen, that I've asked my bank to tell you that I'm a good credit, or I have a good credit rating. I've asked my bank to tell you that I have a right to work here, and I've asked my bank to give the online company a token, so that if they ever need all of that information in the future under extreme circumstances, like for instance, say I check into a hotel and then I burn the hotel down, they can track me down. um, by doing these simple things, the bank protects my privacy.
I think it's very innovative thought and very interesting, because actually you're talking about taking something that today for banks is a cost center, because they have to do that KYC, and this is very much part of IO's business to help bank do their KYC, and turn it into a business model where they can also share it back with, I understand, with the help and the consent of the customer,
Mm-hmm.
and turn it into a revenue stream.
Yeah, it'll be a revenue stream for banks. There's a model of this already that happens in the Nordics. It's called Bank ID, and it's really simple. Um, uh, Rather than sharing all your private information, customers will log in with their Bank ID. They will share obfuscated information, like this person has a right to work here, or this person is a resident and they're over a certain age. So you can buy alcohol, for example, or you could buy a lotto ticket, or this person's a good credit. We'll give you a token if you need to get back in touch with them, but their name is XYZ, and you can rent the car to them, or you can rent the vacation rental to them, or this person really does have this degree. Sharing all of that basic information to an employer, whatever the scenario is. By the bank doing it, the person shares less information. Their data is protected by the bank, and you have a situation there where the banks are providing this on average 200 times a year on behalf of their customers.
Mm-hmm.
So the flow is really simple. The customer goes to a website and registers and says, register with Bank ID. They get a little message on their phone, which is from their banking app saying there's a request. Do you want to share this data? They say yes. The data gets shared, and the thing gets the new account gets set up. It's incredibly simple. Well, for banks, that'll generate a revenue stream for them. But because today, if you are, say, a gig economy company or anybody who's registering a customer, if you register this person, you have to do these background checks on who they are to see whether or not they're telling you the truth. That means tapping a back channel service that the customer has no control over. It happens behind the scenes. They're not conscious of what's happening to confirm whether or not this customer is telling you the truth. Those services cost money. So we're fixing this by providing those services at a far more cost-effective rate by delivering them from the banks. And we're putting the customer in the loop. So the customer controls how their data flows.
And what about information that the bank might not have? For example, assets that people have, some history, education. I'm not sure that banks hold the education information about people. How would those additional data sources would play into this scheme?
So this is where AIO comes in and how you guys can help us to solve these problems. If we're providing these information services where we are providing custody services for customer data, we need to create a vault for them to put their data in. And we need to create a flow where those customers can gather data from disparate sources and put it into the data vault. That's what AIO can do for us. Sorry, you got now a bunch of background noise, so maybe we'll wait a minute. um, uh, the AIO data, we think of it as a vault, is invaluable because it allows us to create a new class of assets that we provide custodial services for, data assets, information assets, and then give customers control over how that's distributed. And the technology is AIO's technology.
We see, so thank you for that, and we see a lot of interest on how to share the data. How can a bank, how can a person share the data with third parties? The essence of our patents is indeed about verifying information and sharing it in a verified way. And our patents are around being able to verify the authenticity of information that comes from many sources, sometimes cross-border, sometimes in places that do not expose this data very easily. For example, tax information, IRS in the US, or registration information about companies. I wanted to ask about the ecosystem. How much banks are interested in this? What do you see? What kind of interest do you see around the world from other banks about this?
The problem we're trying to solve is one of the last fundamental problems of the internet: who people are and whether or not you can trust them. Everyone knows that trust is difficult to establish in the digital space. Misinformation flows everywhere. The risk of fraud and phishing is everywhere. So the interest in solving this is enormous. The numbers that we've seen estimate, HSBC estimates that all of this difficulty and the financial crimes, the misinformation, the lack of identity problems costs the global economy $2 trillion a year. This is a significant percentage of the global economy. It's over 2%. McKinsey has estimated that if we can solve this in developed countries, we will add 3% to GDP by 2030. These are enormous, big changing things. There's not very often that you get to work on a problem that has a T associated with it rather than a B or an M for millions. You know, this is a big challenge, and by solving it, we solve some of the core issues of around privacy and how your information moves that have been permeating the web everywhere. The guy who invented the web, Tim Berners-Lee, is talking about solving these exact problems and the importance of solving them today.
But how is this different than other identity solutions that are in the market? There are quite a lot of players in the identity space that deal with authenticity and authentication and so forth. And there are a lot of players in the market that deal with collecting data and providing that data in order for banks and other parties to understand who they're dealing with.
Yep.
How is this solution different? What is the competitive edge?
The market today is primarily a back channel market. It happens, a flow of information about people happens without customer consent, without people being conscious of how the data about them is being shared and moved. This changes the dynamic and includes the person whose data it really is in the loop. And it treats that data with the care and respect that it should be treated with by putting it in an institution that's used to providing custodial services for valuable assets, a bank. And then it leverages what banks or what is already the highest grade know your customer process in the world. And that won't change. And some of these back channel services won't move. They'll still be part of that process, but they'll be happening to inform the banks and help them to establish certainty about who they're dealing with at the beginning, and then leveraging it to reuse it again and again with the customer, controlling how it moves going forward. The entire house is coming down now.
No,
anyway.
but I think it's progressing. Okay. Hold on, let me
Threw off your train of thought. Sorry about that.
No. That's I'm trying to think of yes. So let's come back to this. So what do you see is the problem with that information going in back channels and actually not bothering the customer with it? Because I think this is so I'll start with that. IO came in with a very different approach to existing solutions because we put the customer in the center. The customer is the owner of their own information. They control their information. We have a patented technology on helping them obtain it and also to share it in what we call a smart exposure, which is giving them control about what attribute and exactly what information do they share. But we do encounter many times when we speak to customers that are telling us, well, we are connected to this scoring agency and we are connecting to this data aggregator and we are pulling information from that place about the customer. So why should we involve the customer in this? We have a few perspectives on this. I'll share them in a minute, but I'm happy to if you could also share your thoughts on this.
I think that this is a major shift that is happening. People are understanding the dangerous impact if their privacy is constantly compromised. They understand how it's being used at a global scale to feed the misinformation, to threaten their financial stability and compromise the safety of their identity and how they can control what they own, their house, the stocks, bonds, cash in their account, that stuff. What it means is that if we can solve these issues, we give people back control of their information. And I think you're seeing a trend, a global trend, a macro trend around privacy and enforcing it. We're seeing things like GDPR in Europe. We're seeing similar efforts in the States. We're seeing similar efforts in LATAM, in Africa, where people are understanding that consumers have to be put back in control of their own information. And what that'll do is it'll do two things. It will force changes in the current back channel processes. It will also give more consumers the opportunity to opt out of those back channels. And that opting out will change how places function. The other thing is that if you look for a lot of businesses, it's just too damn expensive to gather all this stuff and protect it. Do you want me to? How much noise is coming through?
It's okay. It's not that bad.
Okay. Yeah, for me, it's very loud, but maybe the mic is drowning it out.
Yes.
So, yeah, the current process where every company has to assemble all this data, if you think about it, it's badly organized, right? Oh, it froze again. Are you there?
Yes, I am. It,
Oh,
it's
why
choppy
is my internet?
with the background noise makes the internet go slower.
Yeah, somehow or other, I don't know why. Um, should be fast, but anyway, okay. Um, uh, what was I saying?
The changes in how the world approaches privacy and those back channels is making a difference. There is a difference. There is a trend that is changing.
Yeah,
This
it's a
and
macro.
the cost of gathering all that information.
Yeah, that's it. This is the other thing. Um, people, companies have gotten used to outsourcing things that are not core to their business. So um, that's why you don't run a data center for most companies anymore. You outsource that to Google or Amazon or Microsoft, and you use their cloud data centers. Companies are starting to realize that it is very expensive to assemble all of this information about their customers, to pay all of those back channel systems, and to then protect their customers' data. And because of regulatory changes like GDPR, they're realizing that it is becoming even more expensive if their customers' data gets lost, if they get hacked. So they are realizing that this isn't a problem they want to solve. They would rather outsource identity to a system that they can trust, where the system is going to take the liability for them, and they can then just focus on their business. So if your business is selling cakes online, the last thing you want to do is to be able to maintain a sophisticated identity system. That's crazy.
Yes,
You just want to be able to have your customers easily log in, know that they're who they claim to be, and if they have ordered some, you know, expensive wedding cake, that they're going to pay for it. It's
yes,
simple.
yes. Um, a major aspect, I think that draws customers to our solution is also the dispersity of data. We see that the traditional methods of data aggregators that collect data turns to be, first of all, stale data. Many of those data sources keep data that is 2-3 months old, and especially in such hectic times, it's a long time to get stale data. And the other thing is that the most important information is private information. It's not just knowing your company number and the company's address, but it's actually a financial statement, bank transactions, a list of assets, who are the owners in a company, who are the UBOs, what is their nationality. And usually this information does not reside with those traditional data aggregators. And the method of helping customers that have the most access to all those data sources to go and collect them, and for, at least in our case, for our technology to be able to authenticate that this is real data and it comes from the right source, and that it's tamper-proof, that the customer cannot make any changes to this, also brings a very wide set of additional data that is lacking today in the traditional methods. And it also, and the lack of this information pretty much introduces a lot of friction in the interactions, because people are asked to upload documents, to bring information, to come to branches or to face-to-face meetings. And the idea, and I think this is the vision that you're also speaking about, that everything should be done digitally, with a minimal exposure of data. And I think this distributed architecture that we are promoting also helps keep the privacy and keep it away from centralized data aggregators that collect data and then resell it to whomever pays for the data.
Yeah, and it gets resold again and again. I think you're exactly right. The back channel data sources are often stale. They leave the customer out of control, and they're not nearly rich enough to solve the kinds of problems that you need. Too much stuff is still done with paper and pencil. Too much stuff is still done in a non-digitalized way. If we look at what's been done with Bank ID in the Nordics, they have managed to take the mortgage process from something that was a 16-day process and involved lots of paper down to something that can be done in minutes. They've had to put a break in there to force people to breathe because it's a big commitment, and so now they deliberately slow it down to 1 day, but still going from 16 days down to 1, and going from 70 physical pages down to none, and putting the financial institutions in the process so that people can confirm and show how their data is being shared. Um, uh, so putting people in control so that they can determine how their data is being shared has radically reduced the amount of fraud in their system. Their losses have gone from over 1% a year down to fractions of a basis point. It's tiny. And
Amazing.
if we can add that to everywhere, it becomes a simple thing. Our goal as a financial institution is to help our customers, whether they're individuals or businesses, to thrive. If they thrive, we'll do well. Okay, how do people thrive? They thrive when they can trade with each other. What do they need in order to trade with each other? They have to be able to trust each other. And if they can trust each other, understand who's shipping what, who's providing what, and whether or not they're going to fulfill their requirements and their obligations, is exactly the basis for trade. If we can facilitate that globally, we have a big impact.
And how we've been talking in the past many times. How do you see IO's solution fit into that vision? How do you see our capabilities come into play there?
As a consumer is trying to gather all of their data and leave it in a data vault with their bank, well, we need a platform to do that. We need a technology that helps us to safely, securely gather that information and put it in this data vault. And IO has the technology to do that. You have the secure technology and the capability to make sure that, for instance, if somebody is reconfirming their address from a power company, that that it hasn't been manipulated before it enters the data vault, which means that we as a bank can turn around and say, yes, this is true. And that becomes critically important when we as a bank need to say complicated things like, yes, this person really is the CEO. She can really sign legal agreements on behalf of the company. Or, yes, this person's really in accounts receivable. That's a real invoice. Those are real payment instructions. Or, yes, this person is really in the call center and they're really trying to help you. They really represent the company. Okay, if we're trying to do all of those things, we have to be certain that that information that represents that individual, those credentials that that person has, we have to be certain that they're valid and true. IO has the technology for us to be certain of all of that information. Otherwise, we'd have to create from scratch ways to gather all of this stuff, and that's not easy.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. we believe also, we believe in our vision that the future is that it will be digital, and that everything, every claim that people make about themselves or companies make about themselves, if they could be verified in minutes, and this could be a very wide set of claims, from education to assets to who your customer are to the fact that you are who you claim you are. If all this can be verified in seconds, it's going to change how the world looks, and it's going to change how business processes happen. And I think this initiative and this thought is going to be the next thing that changes how the internet and how business is done over the web, and how people interact with each other as we become more and more digital, especially after this pandemic.
Yeah, it's going to level the global playing field. Now, somebody running a business in Peru can be just as well known to a customer in Israel or in France as the company down the street, and can be just as well trusted. And so we're going to change the opportunities for small businesses, for individuals, and for big businesses to be able to do business safely and freely in a digital way. It's thanks to what you guys are building.
Thank you. I think we'll wrap it up with that. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
joining and sharing with us. And we will continue these webinars and place them on our website. Thank you very much, Rod.
Thank you. Be well.